بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا. ولا تقربوا الزنا إنه كان فاحشة وساء سبيلا. That's what it says in the Quran. And do not go near adultery, for it is a shameful deed and an evil way. Dear brothers, my khutbah topic today is on the minor sins of zina, or adultery, as we say in English. The ayah I recited is from Surah Al-Isra, ayah number 32. Now, I said minor sins, right? And when we think of minor sins, we tend to brush them off, thinking they're no big deal. And why should I focus on the minor sins? Should not be focusing on not committing the major sins, right? That's what we like to think. We don't even realize this subconsciously we think this way, right? But the truth is, we're all going to be on day judgment standing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with our scale in front of us. One side is the scale is our good deeds, and the other side, we may think, oh, alhamdulillah, no major sins. But there could be many minor sins that stack up and start weighing down our good deeds. That's why my point is really that we should not undermine the importance of protecting ourselves, safeguarding ourselves from the minor sins, especially the minor sins of zina. Now, speaking of which, it's very interesting how Allah makes this command in this ayah compared to other commands. For example, in the Quran, Allah says, do not drink alcohol, do not deal with interest, do not eat pork, etc. It's very specific, do not do this or do not do that. Whereas with zina, Allah isn't just saying do not commit zina. He's saying do not go near zina. Right? Do not even go near it. And that makes a world of a difference. So what does it mean? What does Allah mean when he says do not even go near zina? It was narrated from Abu Hurairah that the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah has decreed for every son of Adam his share of zina, which he will inevitably commit. The zina of the eyes is looking, the zina of the tongue is speaking. One may wish and desire, and the five parts confirm that or deny it. This is a hadith that many of us have probably heard from the Bukhari and Muslim. Now, it is also important to note that most scholars agree that there's also the zina of the hands, which is to touch something which is forbidden. So, in today's khutbah, I'm going to go through each of these, breaking down each of these little categories. So, what is zina of the eyes? Well, it's obvious. It's to look at something which is haram, right? Specifically from the opposite gender, of course. Now, Usman says in the Quran, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَعْضُوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ, and tell the believing men to lower their gaze, right? From Surah Nur. We have heard this phrase so often, lower your gaze, lower your gaze. And we tell this to our children growing up, lower your gaze. However, in today's society, I feel that us Muslims, when we think of lowering our gaze, we only think of the extremities, looking at, lower our gaze from the haram content on the internet or, on TV or something. But how did Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba implement this ayah, lower your gaze? You see, when they, meaning the Muslims during that time, when they were in the vicinity of other women, they're near other women, they wouldn't even look at the woman. I'm not even talking about the body, I'm talking about just the face. They wouldn't even look at a woman's face for fear of committing this sin. So they wouldn't even look at a woman's face. And on top of that, and also I was going to say that if they happened to look at a woman's face, they would quickly look away. Right? They quickly looked away. They didn't stare. They didn't sit there watching, seeing this person, admiring it. They immediately looked away. But let's look at ourselves today, in today's world, our modern technology, right? Forget TV shows and movies, okay? We all know that. But now let's, just something as simple as the news. You turn on the channel for any news channel, and what do you see? Almost always there's an anchor woman, right, who's wearing full makeup, and she's the center of attention for the camera. And what is happening? I mean, come on, let's not be, we need to be realistic. We're not going to say, oh, I turn on the TV, but I only listen, I don't look away. We watch. We're all watching. We're all seeing, this woman, right? And she's talking to us, and we're paying attention to this. We're not looking away. We're focusing on this. It doesn't matter Any country, Arab country, basic country, America, all the news channels are the same. We have women who are in full makeup and intentionally being the center of attention, right? That's completely intentional. And so we have to realize that we must lower our gaze from this because it can lead to other thoughts of sin, which we'll get to more later on, inshallah. Now, I'm not saying we should get rid of our TVs and the internet and all that. I mean, if you can, alhamdulillah, that's great. But for most of us who won't be doing that, we should at least understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet have commanded us to do here in these ayat and hadith, right? To lower the gaze as much as we can. Right? Now, the next category, zina of the tongue, which refers to speaking to the opposite gender, but in a freely manner, right? Meaning without any purpose. So let me take, for example, in my workplace, okay, my boss assigns me a project and I have to work alongside a female colleague on this project. Okay, that's fine. So I'll say that's okay. You have an objective. You know, it doesn't matter who you're working with. You complete the objective. Now, if I'm just talking to this woman on specifically the project-related, tasks and whatnot, that's okay. But the problem comes in when we start having and indulging ourselves into conversation with the opposite gender, right? Whether it's woman to man or man to woman, doesn't matter. But when we start indulging ourselves in conversation, that's where it becomes zina of the tongue, right? You're starting to get to know that person. You're starting to get to know their personality. And if they're even the slightest bit of attractive towards you, then it makes it all the worse, right? Because now feelings start to come into play. Even if you're married, it doesn't matter, right? The feelings can still come in, right? So, and when the feelings start to get in, then it starts to cloud our judgment. Our thoughts are clouded. They're corrupted. So this is why Prophet is saying it's so important to safeguard our own tongues and to only speak to the opposite gender when necessary, if necessary. And just a side note, a short reminder, most of us know, in general, the believer does not indulge himself or herself in useless talk regardless of who they're talking to. They don't indulge themselves, right? Prophet even said that the believer eats less, sleeps less, and talks less, right? He does not indulge himself in useless talk. So it's just a short reminder for ourselves, so I'm include myself. Now, the third category is zina of the hands, which is to physically touch someone from the opposite gender. And what bothers me about this, not the scholar's opinion, but how we Muslims take this. We take it so lightly, right? And I'm talking about specifically handshakes with the opposite gender. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to witness Muslims who seem to be okay with shaking hands with the opposite gender, whether it's man to woman or woman to man. They have no problem doing this. And they'll make all the excuses in the world when you tell them that this is not right. You say, no, this is not for Islam. You say, no. Oh, this person, she's much older than me, so it's not a big deal. Oh, no. What will they think of me? They'll judge me. They'll get the wrong perception of me. They'll misunderstand Islam. It's a bad way to introduce Islam to them. Right? They'll get offended. They come with every excuse they can possibly find to justify doing the wrong thing. So my question is, why is it that we are so afraid? I mean, that's what it comes down to. We're afraid. It's not that, maybe some Muslims may have to believe that it's okay, but the majority of us know it's wrong. But we do it because we're afraid. We're afraid to stand our ground. We're afraid to say, no, this is what I believe in. I'm sorry. Right? This is what we should say. I'm sorry, I can't shake hands. My beliefs forbid physical interaction with the opposite gender. Simple sentence. And I have done this many times, and not a single time has, any female or colleague or even female boss I've had any issues. They didn't look at me any less. They didn't get offended by my words. They didn't disrespect me. In fact, they actually respected me more because I stood my ground with my beliefs. So why don't we Muslims do this more often? Why is it that when it comes to being around non-Muslims, we are more willing to pander to their society, to conform to their standards? You see, the moment you've given that handshake, now you've opened the door, right? And I'll get more into that opening the road and opening the door in a little bit, but this is what happens. Once you start that handshake, you say, it's just a one-time thing. But if this is a colleague you'll be seeing at least on a daily or weekly basis, the handshake will become more often, or maybe be something else, a fist bump or whatever. Now, I know in today's pandemic world, we're not really shaking hands as much, but still, if things were to go back to normal, I wouldn't be surprised if we're all doing the same thing once again. So it's something we have to really take with importance here. It's not something we should take lightly. We have to realize that we should not be touching another non-Muslim woman or any woman that's not a part of our family or not family. قولي قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه انه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه. Now, I'm going to recite the same ayah I recited earlier in the beginning of this book. Allah subhanahu is saying, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Do not go near zina. Do not go near adultery. This is what we talked about. We broke this ayah down initially. Now, we're going to talk about the second part of this ayah. إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. For it is a shameful deed and an evil way. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean to say an evil way? The scholars have said that this means an evil way. It refers to opening the roads, or opening the doors to other evils, to other sins. So when we go towards zina, that's what I'm saying. When we go towards zina, when we go near zina, we are opening the door towards other sins. And this is exactly what Prophet is also talking about in the same hadith I mentioned earlier. Right? He says the zina of the eyes is looking, the zina of the tongue is speaking. One may wish and desire, and the private parts confirm that or deny it. Because the private parts, zina of the private parts is the major sin of zina. That's the major sin of zina. So what the Prophet is saying is that when you are, imagine yourself, just imagine yourself. You see, whether it be a colleague or, someone on school campus, whatever. You see a woman coming to you, right? Maybe you find her attractive. Now you're looking at her, right? You're looking at her face, you're looking at her. And as you're looking at her, she comes to you and she shakes hands with you. And you shake hands back with her. Right now you've touched her. And then you start to talk, right? Even if you initially were assigned a project, now you're talking about other things. You're talking about how was your vacation? What are you doing this weekend? You're asking all these questions to create conversation. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's to make it less awkward, to break the ice. Come on, you're creating conversation. This is not the way of a Muslim. We shouldn't be creating conversations unnecessarily, especially with the opposite gender. So when you do all these things, you're touching the person, you're looking at them, you're talking to them, you're getting to know them, their personality, then Shaitan will start to whisper into your ear. Well, he's already been whispering into your ear for a while now, but he'll be whispering into your ear now. And what happens? The thoughts start to creep in, right? Now you start imagining yourself being alone with that person. And that's when things start to get really bad. And this is what Prophet says, and the private parts confirm that or deny it. Now you may commit the major sin of zina, or you may not. Right? We may not commit the major sin of zina, but that doesn't mean it's okay for us to go that route. Prophet is saying we need to safeguard ourselves from even committing the minor sin so we don't lead ourselves to major sin. We can never be so arrogant to think, oh, I'm not that kind of person. Oh, I'm not gonna, commit that major sin. No. I know how to control myself. I'm married. You can come up with all these excuses, but the truth is, the desire can be very strong. When we're alone with Shaitan, there's no telling what can happen. Right? You don't know yourself until you're in those, in those moments. So this is, how we have to be careful that we don't lead ourselves onto the path of sin. And this is why Allah warns us in the beginning of do not even go near it. I've repeated it many times because it's something that we really need to understand how gravely important it is. Again, Allah when he talks about alcohol, does not say do not go near alcohol, but he does say do not go near zina. That's how dangerous this sin is. So to recap, basically, to protect ourselves, to safeguard ourselves, we must first of all lower our gaze. That's the first step. Right? Straight from the eye. Lower your gaze. Whether you're a man or woman, this applies to both, by the way. I don't know so many women to think it's only for men. No, it's for both. Right? And then we should not indulge ourselves in useless talk. Right? So if you're on a project with someone or you're working as a homework assignment, whatever it is in school, you don't indulge yourself in useless talk with that person. Right? Just focus on the objective on the task. And do not let yourself fall into the trap of shaking hands with the other person. Believe me, they will not be offended. You create only more problems for yourself if you indulge yourself in shaking hands with the other person. So do yourself a favor for the sake of Allah and hold yourself back. Just think about it. Is it really worth committing this minor sin just to possibly may not offend this person? This is the least we can do, inshallah. We know it's not going to protect us from it. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. Ya Allah, please help strengthen our iman and make us among the Muslimin, among the mu'mineen. Ya Allah, please protect us from the fitna of the Dajjal. Ya Allah, please help ease the suffering of Muslims around the world. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقيموا الصلاة.